Start the recording on my end. Record on this computer. And looks like we are live on YouTube. This is the Male Entrepreneur podcast, and we are live in 3, 2. All right, welcome back to Male Entrepreneur, the podcast for men who win, with your host Purdeep Sangha. Purdeep, how you doing today, man?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. Overall, pretty good, but this whole quarantine thing is I'm personally okay, but it's driving my kids nuts, man. Yesterday, I just had an interesting day. I was about to put my kids to bed at like 5 in the afternoon because they were just going nuts. So I was like, "Okay, I think you guys behave, or you guys go to bed because I can't handle this." I'd put them literally. I think half their day was spent in timeout. So it's interesting because I think it's having a bigger impact on them than it is on me.
Yeah, well, okay, so for the podcast listeners, I'm looking at you right now, and I'm noticing that neither one of us look like we've gotten a clean shave in a couple of days. I'm starting to feel like the more I stay in my home, the more I'm starting to look like I'm homeless.
Yeah, exactly, right? I actually did this on purpose. It makes me my wife, well, other people, my wife doesn't like it whatsoever. She doesn't like facial hair. But I'm like, I might as well, other people think with a little bit of white, you get a little bit more of a distinguished look. So we'll see how that goes.
Nice, got some salt mixed in with the pepper there. Okay, so what do we got on the agenda for today's podcast?
Well, I thought it was a timely episode to talk about 3 skills that business owners need to have at this particular time, because obviously with the struggles that are happening, you and I have discussed this offline in terms of business owners that are just shutting their doors down. And so, what are 3 skills that business owners need to have at this particular time to really get them through this challenge? Because one of the things that we can do in a downtime is really beef up our skills. And it's important to beef up our skills as business owners. And I don't say this and I don't mean this in a derogatory way, but a lot of businesses are run and a lot of businesses stay in business, um, aside from not having the right business skills in place. And we experienced that over the last 10 years of having a good economic run. And now business owners are getting tested. Their skills are getting tested. So these are the 3 skills that people need to have really to make it through, and get their business through and surviving and also thriving as well.
Yeah, we've talked about this before, um, but I think that it's really ringing true right now. You've mentioned in past podcast episodes, look, there's going to be an economic downturn. We don't know when it's coming. We don't know what's going to cause it, but things tend to balance out. We were having this great economy for a long time, and in a great economy, even even businesses with bad business models and bad leadership skills can still do well. But when we hit that eventual speed bump in the road, a lot of people are not going to be able to make it over it. And I don't want to downplay the severity of what we're going. I mean, I don't think we've ever seen an economic response like we're seeing right now. I think this is probably going to be the worst economic situation that we've probably ever dealt with as a species. Um, that aside, though, there are still going to be some people that make it out of this on the other end fairly fairly well put together. And I think that these 3 things that you sent me the notes for, these are going to be really the key factors in what determines who's going to survive this and who's not going to survive this on the other end.
Yeah, absolutely. You just nailed it. And I think people that were in business as true entrepreneurs, they realized that this time was coming and they were actually looking forward to it because they banked their cash, they made their businesses liquid enough. They actually had the strategies in place to say, when this does happen, we're going to be able to move our business. And I hear this word a lot, pivot, right? Because that's the common word is businesses need to pivot. And so the people that had the hindsight are actually set up the best. Now we can't change the past. We don't have a crystal ball. All we can do is focus on what we need to do going forward. But it's really interesting here. You talked about something that in terms of how bad this could really be. We really don't know. I think it's funny in bad times. The saying is anybody that's making a prediction is really just making a prediction, right? There is no real forecast. There is no real, you can say solid, what's going to happen in the future. So I think that's important to know. Whatever people are predicting is still a prediction. So it could be severely bad, just like the Great Depression. It could be worse than the Great Depression, although we have some tools now that they didn't have back in the time in terms of monetary policies and fiscal policies, stuff like that, to really maneuver things. And plus, hopefully, we've come together better as a global, um, you can say, countries and a party to come together to say this is a global crisis. We did that very well in the 2008 recession. The countries came together and said, how do we fix the global banking system? The one thing here I do want to point out before we get into the three skills is we have a lot of conversation about protectionism, and I think protectionism, when it comes to building stuff on homeland, is important when it comes to the critical things that we produce, like medical supplies and stuff like that. We're seeing that with masks and PPE equipment. But protectionism actually deepens the recession. If you take a look at why the recession in the late 20s and early 30s happened, the Great Depression, it happened because of protectionism. People didn't realize what the impact was based on saying, hey, look, we don't want to trade, or we're going to put up high tariffs or do these kinds of things. It actually stops competitiveness and actually causes the recession to get worse. I want people to understand that before we move down that path, because what we do over the next 12 months is going to be very critical. It will determine whether it continues on for another few years or whether we get out of this sooner. So I just wanted to put that plug in there. So when it comes to the actual skills, this is what I'm really passionate about, Nathan, because this is a saying that I heard from Peter Drucker. And if you haven't or don't know who Peter Drucker is, he is the most famous business management consultant in the world. He's no longer around, but he was probably the most smartest business management consultant as well. And he said that business is fundamentally two things. Business is fundamentally marketing and innovation. And I heard that, and at the beginning, I wasn't a big fond of, or very fond of marketing, but I was a big fan of innovation. That's my background from an education standpoint. And I said, this is really interesting. But when I really understood it, I did a deep dive. And I'm so glad right now, because this truly, this skill right here, marketing and innovation, is a fundamental principle of actually getting your business ahead. You need to understand how to be innovative, which means it's not just creativity, it's not brainstorming. There's actually a system behind it. I was just on a call with one of my clients before this podcast and explaining the system. And he's like, wow, I didn't realize this. I didn't understand that it was actually a system. So there is a system behind innovation. There is a system obviously behind effective marketing, but these are two things that you should focus on immediately. Is say, how do I really become innovative? And how do I focus on my marketing? Because what it ends up happening is a lot of people um, pull back on marketing in the tough times, right? Because they see that as an expense, not necessarily an investment. Where effective marketing, and Nathan, you could speak to this because this is what you do day in and day out. If you put the investment in and you have the right people on your side, you get the return. That's the whole point of marketing. And the best organizations, if you take a look at what happened in the 2008 recession, is the best companies that came out of it, they actually spent 10% on average, more than their competitors when it came to marketing. And so they spent, and we're talking about billion-dollar corporations. We're not just talking about the average businesses. So we're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars in marketing costs that they actually poured into their strategy during the recession. So this is something to pay attention to. Focus on your strategy, but also innovation and marketing as well. The one thing that popped up is I see that people are so consumed with what's happening right now. It's tough for them to become strategic. It's tough for them to think about, what am I going to do 3 months from now, 6 months from now, 12 months from now, because people are just trying to survive today, right? And I feel like they're in the deer in headlights. Nathan, are you getting that same feeling as well?
For about not so much with most of my clients, but almost everybody that I know outside of my business world, all of my personal friends and acquaintances, about 80-90% of them are like that. They say, I'm not even trying to think about the future. I barely know how I'm going to put food on the table next week. I'm just going to sit here and watch Netflix.
Yeah, so it's that whole, you're frozen, you're like a deer, right? You're just waiting for that friggin' train or that car to hit you, and that's not what you need to be doing. If I could say anything, you know what? It's to keep moving, is to take a look. Do not let any rock unturned. Don't leave it unturned. Look at all the avenues that you can think of. Reach out to as many people you can think of that can possibly help you. And this is something that is very important. And I'm going to say this very straight up because this has nothing to do with pitching my services or my business, but you need to have a business advisor. You need to have a business coach. If you don't have one, you're shooting yourself in the foot. But don't get just any average business coach. Get someone that has proven skills because they will help you through this. They will give you some insight in terms of what you can do, how you can maneuver your business, how to keep your, if they're good at what they do, how to keep your mindset in the right position, right? You can't let yourself be lazy in this time because that laziness is what's going to kill you. And I'm a firm believer, and I put this on a number of posts. The economy does not kill businesses. It's the management of businesses that kills businesses. It's how you manage it. It's how you manage yourself right now. If you're off your routine, if you're sitting watching Netflix, if you're eating unhealthy, if you're not doing all the things that you need to be doing to take care of yourself first, how is your business going to survive? So that's something to pay attention to. Absolutely take care of yourself. Don't sit there and be like a deer in the headlights. That's the worst thing you can do.
So you talk about leadership a lot, and I think it's one of your pet peeves when you see bad leadership. And I wanted to get your thoughts on the importance of business leadership right now. What types of qualities, what types of skills should people be working on in themselves if they happen to be a team leader, if they happen to be somebody who's leading a business right now?
Yeah, there's three simple things. It's a really good question. I am all about leadership because leadership is what really drives home. If you have an organization that has employees or you have strategic partners or whatever that looks like, it's about leadership. Right now, people are starving for leadership. People are starving for someone to stand up and say, hey, look, I might not know everything, but at least I have a direction and I have a game plan. And if you're with me, you're with me. We're going to do this together. Right? That's what leadership is about seeing the future, having a vision, being able to get through this foggy time and actually looking on the other side and saying, you know what, that's what the light at the end of the tunnel looks like, because we will get there. We're going to look past that depending on, it's just a matter of time. That's all it comes down to. Whether it's 3 months or 3 years, we're going to get through this. Now, if you want to get through this personally, you have to not only be a leader yourself, because here's a big thing. You have to be a leader for your business because your employees are looking up to you. They need clarity. One of the biggest things that stops productivity in a business during a recession is basically fear. It's stress. And if you can stand up as a leader and help them just alleviate some of that stress just by saying, hey, look, it's going to be okay. Hey, look, this is our game plan. It's not going to be easy, but this is what we need to do. People need that right now. So I am, asking you to stand up as a leader. We're not seeing that in the political system whatsoever. In the US, Canada, somewhat, we have that, but we're not seeing that from higher up. We have to do that at the community level and as business owners, but more importantly, as men, as father figures, right? As husbands, because we are also leaders of our family and we need to keep our families in a positive state, because this is not only going to impact the economy, this is going to impact people, this is going to impact society. We've already seen that people are becoming more pessimistic. People are getting they're pointing fingers. For example, we have this whole hate between freedom and is this COVID virus a scam and all this crap. And now you have medical workers coming out and saying, please, help us out. Like it's ripping society apart. So we need, as leaders, to step up and say, okay, what do we do to bring people together and really inspire? Because that's what it is. The other thing that a leader does, truly does, this is something that actually just had a aha moment for me when I first learned this. I can't remember where I got this from, but one of the key roles as a leader is to remove roadblocks for the people that you are leading.
Mm.
And so, what are the roadblocks for your people, for your employees, and how can you remove them? That is the biggest thing, the best thing you can do as a leader, because a leader's role is not to just sit there and march in front of the band and say, follow me, follow me. The leader's role is to say, what's stopping you? Let me take it away from you so you can move on your own direction. You can move forward on your own. That's what a leader does. And so find out what those roadblocks are for your staff, for your employees, your family, your wife, your kids, and help remove them because people will remember that in the future.
So, man, it's there's a lot of there's a lot to unpack there, and I know that we're short on time, so I don't want to get too deep into it. But for people that are struggling with this, again, it's easy to lead when times are been plentiful. But I have seen, especially because so many people are in a state of absolute terror right now, being calm, being inspirational, being what normally would be good leadership skills is kind of getting people attacked by saying by being the person that says, okay, let's think about this, let's figure out what the best. You're something something, you're a horrible person, you're not taking this seriously enough. So normally I would say yes, I agree with all that, but when people are in a highly emotional state, especially with fear and panic, it kind of seems like that having that attitude is putting a target on your back with certain people.
Oh, 100%, because I think there's always going to be a panic. And then you have to say, and here's a reality, whether it's through social media or other channels, the reality is that people are influenced by the people that are closest to them. That's the biggest thing. So you can say what you want on social media, or you can put out an ad or marketing or do whatever. But if that person is sitting in a household with people that are totally negative, watching news and watching all of this and feeding them a bunch of crap, you can bet that they're gonna have their minds changed. So you don't have accountability to change someone else's mind. You don't have accountability to do that. You can just do what basically the best you can. The people that will follow you. And at some point in time when the emotions start to run dry a little bit of logic will kick in and I think people will start jumping in. So really good point right now.
So being a team leader also kind of boils down to being very selective about who you let on your team.
Oh, definitely. You have to. I'm very selective because if I'm, with me, if I hear, and I have disassociated myself with people online with certain things because I see their messages and I say, no, you shouldn't be pushing that because right now we need unity. We don't need division, right? And so that's important to take a look at. Right now, we need unity. We don't need division. We don't need finger pointing. The finger pointing will happen. We will hold people accountable, hopefully. Um, but we need people brought together. That's the best way that we can actually get through this.
And
Sorry, go ahead.
oh, I guess as we're closing up, my last question for you is, if you're dealing with all of this stuff, you've got a lot of weight on your shoulders. Right now, the decisions that you're making probably have more impact than ever before. Right now, the amount of basically consequence from the decisions that you're making is going to be more than I think ever before in history. With all of that weight on your shoulders, how do you make better decisions or even good decisions?
Yeah, well, the best thing to do, and there's a whole system that I have that I show business owners how to actually make better decisions. But I want to break down the few key points. The first thing is you have to be in a positive state, a high energy state when you make decisions. If you're in a low energy state, if you've just watched the news, for example, if you haven't eaten, haven't exercised, and you're just kind of feeling slumped, do not make a decision. Don't. It's a worse time. If you're tired, don't make a decision. I never make decisions past 7 o'clock in the evening because all these crazy thoughts go through my mind because I know I'm in a lower energy state. So I say, I'm not even going to think about it. That's the most important thing. The second thing to take a look at is who's influencing your decisions because your decisions are based on reference points, people that actually influence you. So are you aligned with the right people? Are you aligned with people that have the expertise to give you true insight to making that decision? Or are you just listening to your grandma say something or, someone else? Focus on those key points. And the other thing to remember is that in any time that we're under stress, anytime that we have, a situation like this, And even in normal and just normal circumstances, our brain tends to make decisions based on what's the easiest to understand. And so if you are looking at a headline, if you're looking at a newspaper ad or whatever it is, those are designed to make it easy for you to be influenced. And you have to understand that making a decision requires you to do some work, to do a little digging, to do your research, bring up the real data so you can actually make that decision. Don't just make decisions based on what's easy to understand. Take a look at the more complex stuff. Because I'll give you an example right now. Everybody's saying, protectionism, made in America, made in Canada. That's because it's easy to understand. But they don't realize that it leads to less trade, and less trade leads to a worse economy. So do some research on that. So those are the three things to focus on, Nathan, when it comes to making better decisions.
Man, you're giving away all my secrets on how I manipulate people. I'm not sure that I want to put this episode out now.
The
Okay,
copyright secrets, right?
there you go. Okay. Actually, I think it's important for people to understand these things. It's it's a scary time that we're dealing with, and with people not having a good arsenal of decision making tools at their disposal. Um, things can get a lot worse, and
Mhm.
we'll just have to leave it at that. Pretty, if people want to check out more episodes of the podcast, where can they go?
Well, you got two places. You can go to youtubeformen.com if you want to see our pretty faces, or you can go to mailpodcast.com and listen to the podcast episode.
Awesome. All right, man. Until next time, we will catch you later.
Till next time.